They say you never forget your first case. Mine clung to me like a shroud. Detective Elias Kane. That was me, or at least it used to be. Before the abyss swallowed me whole, before the badge gathered dust, before the bottle became my only companion. 6 years ago, I was the Metro Homicide Division's golden boy, a rising star. Catching killers was my craft, my art. I breathed it, I lived it, until the day I stopped breathing. The day my art turned to ash in my mouth. A mistake. One fatal error in judgment. A young woman, her life a casualty of my failure. Her face forever etched in my mind. Her eyes, wide with terror, haunted my every waking moment. Whiskey couldn't erase the memory. Silence couldn't drown out the echoes of her screams. I was a ghost trapped in my own personal hell. And then the silence shattered. An envelope, plain, white, no return address. It lay on my doorstep like a harbinger of doom. Inside, a single Polaroid. The woman in the photograph was young, mid-30s. Her skin, almost translucent, held the pallor of death. Her eyes were vacant, lifeless. Duct tape covered her mouth, silencing any scream she might have uttered. Her hands, arranged with chilling precision. They formed the shape of a clock, fingers pointing to 11 and 5. A morbid timepiece frozen in time. Underneath the photo, a message scrawled in rough, jagged letters. Tick-tock, Kane. Round 2 begins now. The words pierced me like shards of ice. My blood ran cold. It couldn't be. The Midnight Man. A name whispered in hushed tones. A boogeyman of my past. I thought I'd buried him. Laid him to rest with countless other nightmares. But nightmares, like ghosts, had a way of returning. The precinct. A place I hadn't dared to enter in years. The smell of stale coffee, sweat, and desperation hit me like a physical blow. The new captain, a man I barely recognized, looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. He listened to my story, his face a mask of skepticism. He examined the Polaroid, his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. But then, he shook his head. The case was closed, cold, forgotten. Go home, Kane. He said it with a finality that left no room for argument. Go home and try to forget. As if I could. I did what I did best. I sought solace at the bottom of a bottle. Whiskey burned my throat, a familiar fire that did nothing to quench the ice in my veins. As I poured another drink, a second envelope arrived, this one bearing an address. An apartment across town, and a time 3:11 a.m. I glanced at the clock. 2:44 a.m. The Midnight Man was playing his twisted game, and he was playing for keeps. This time, I was the pawn. The building was deserted, shrouded in darkness, under renovation. The air hung heavy with the smell of dust and decay. The elevator was out of service. I climbed the stairs, each step echoing in the silence, each footfall drawing me closer to the abyss. Apartment 603. The door stood ajar, an invitation into the heart of darkness. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the only furnishings the ghosts of tenants past. And another Polaroid. This one lay on the floor, a single splash of color in the otherwise monochrome world. The same woman. Her eyes were closed now, her face frozen in an eternal sleep. Beneath her image, scrawled in what I hoped was paint, a message taunted me. She blinked. You missed it. A soft hum pierced the silence, faint at first, then growing louder, more insistent, mechanical, rhythmic, like the steady beat of a heartless metronome. I strained to identify the source, my gut twisting with a dread I hadn't felt in years. The bathroom. The hum emanated from behind the closed door. I approached slowly, every nerve ending on high alert. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob, my breath catching in my throat. Inside, the bathroom was small, cramped. The air hung heavy with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic, something that sent a shiver down my spine. And then I saw it. In the bathtub, nestled among the grime and dust, sat an old-fashioned kitchen timer. Its red digital numbers blinked ominously in the gloom, counting down the seconds. 10, 9, 8. panic surged through me, cold and sharp. I didn't know what kind of device it was, what kind of hell it was rigged to unleash. But I knew one thing: I didn't want to be there when it went off. 7, 6, 5. The numbers ticked down, each one a hammer blow to my chest. I had to get out now. I spun on my heel, my heart pounding against my ribs like a drum. 4, 3. I raced out of the bathroom, my lungs burning, my legs heavy with fear. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before me, the exit a distant beacon in the darkness. 2. One. The world exploded. The blast wave hit me with the force of a freight train, throwing me against the wall. My ears rang, the air thick with the smell of smoke and plaster. Debris rained down around me, shards of glass and splintered wood. I lay there for a moment, stunned, my vision blurred. Then the adrenaline surged, pulling me to my feet. I stumbled to the stairwell, my lungs screaming for air. The building groaned around me, its bones shaken to the core. I didn't look back, I didn't need to. The roar of the explosion and the sickening crunch of collapsing concrete told me everything I needed to know. Outside, rain lashed down, washing away the dust and the fear. I stood there, gasping for breath, my body trembling with exhaustion and something else. Something colder, something darker. My car. It was parked across the street, its headlights cutting through the rain-soaked night, and that's when I saw it. Scrawled across the hood in what could only be blood was a message, a promise: your clock is ticking too. My blood ran cold. The words echoed in my mind, a death knell. It was him. He was back, and he was playing for keeps. The Midnight Man, a ghost from my past. A nightmare I thought I'd left buried 6 years ago. He was back, and he wanted to play. My hands shook, but not from fear, from something else. Rage? Determination? Or maybe just the grim acceptance of a weary soul who'd finally run out of road. He wanted me to chase him, to lose myself in the labyrinth of his madness, to confront the ghosts that haunted us both. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what I needed: to hunt, to fight, to feel something, anything other than the crushing weight of my past sins. This time it would be different. This time I wouldn't hesitate. This time I wouldn't falter. This time I would hunt him down and make him pay, even if it killed me. The rain intensified, mirroring the storm raging inside me. The Midnight Man's calling card, a cruel parody of a game we once played, a game I thought had ended years ago. He was resurrecting ghosts, tearing open wounds I'd spent years trying to bandage with booze and silence. 6 years ago, the city had trembled before his reign of terror. He stalked the night, a phantom preying on the innocent, leaving a trail of broken lives and shattered souls in his wake. His calling card, Polaroids of his victims, posed like macabre dolls, their hands contorted into different times on a clock face. I was the one who'd caught him, or so I thought. He'd vanished before the trial, disappeared into thin air, leaving behind a city forever scarred and a detective forever haunted. The Midnight Man's calling card was specific, deliberate. He didn't just want to kill. He wanted to toy with me, to break me, to make me relive my greatest failure. Her name was Sarah, a bright, beautiful young woman with a laugh that could light up a room. She was supposed to be another victory, another notch on my belt. But I was too late, too slow. The Midnight Man had taken her, leaving me with nothing but a Polaroid of her lifeless eyes staring into eternity. The image haunted my dreams, a constant reminder of my failure. And now, he was back, dangling another innocent life before me, daring me to save her. The address on the second envelope was burned into my memory. A dilapidated warehouse on the edge of the city, a haven for rats and forgotten dreams, a place where shadows danced with secrets and the air hung heavy with the ghosts of the past. I drove through the desolate streets, the city lights fading behind me like extinguished hopes. The rain hammered against the windshield, blurring the world into an impressionist painting of despair. With each passing mile, I could feel myself slipping deeper into the abyss, the pull of the past threatening to consume me whole. The warehouse loomed before me, a monolith of darkness against the storm-tossed sky. A single flickering light emanated from a second-story window, a beacon in the sea of despair, or perhaps a lure. The warehouse echoed with a silence more deafening than any storm. The air was thick with the smell of mildew, rust, and something faintly metallic, like blood drying in the air. The flickering light led me deeper into the building through a labyrinth of rusted machinery and discarded dreams. Each creaking step sent shivers down my spine, the silence broken only by the pounding of my own heart. I felt like I was walking into the belly of a beast, the air growing colder, the shadows deeper with every passing moment. And then I saw her. She was bound to a chair, her back to me, her body slumped in unconsciousness. The woman from the Polaroids. Her blonde hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of gold, a stark contrast to the grim surroundings. Her hands were bound behind her, her fingers contorted into the familiar, chilling pose. The hands of a clock, frozen at 11:55. Time was running out. "Hello, Kane," a voice rasped from the shadows. I spun around, my hand instinctively reaching for the gun that wasn't there. The voice sent a chill down my spine, a ghostly echo from a past I couldn't outrun. He was here. The Midnight Man had returned. He emerged from the shadows, a spectre draped in darkness. The flickering light danced across his face, momentarily illuminating the cruel twist of his lips, the glint of madness in his eyes. 6 years had aged him, etched lines of cruelty deeper into his visage. But it was him, the Midnight Man. "You're late, Kane," he rasped, his voice a dry, brittle sound like leaves crunching underfoot. "I was starting to think you'd forgotten about our little game." His gaze shifted to the woman in the chair. Her chest rose and fell with each shallow breath, the only sign of life in that desolate space. He ran a hand almost tenderly over her hair, and a shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't a gesture of affection, but of possession, of control. "Don't worry," he continued, his eyes locking onto mine. "We have plenty of time, time to play, time to remember." "Let her go," I growled, my voice raw with suppressed rage. "This doesn't have to concern her. It's between you and me." He chuckled, a chilling sound that echoed through the cavernous space. Always the hero came. But heroes fall. Remember? He stepped closer, circling me like a predator, sizing up its prey. The air crackled with tension, the silence broken only by the rhythmic drip of water from a leaky pipe somewhere in the darkness. "You want to save her?" he asked, his voice a low hiss. "Then play the game, solve the puzzle. Prove to me you're not the failure I remember." He gestured towards a table in the center of the room. On it lay a wooden box, its surface covered in intricate carvings. A timer was attached to the top, its digital numbers glowing an ominous red in the dim light. 1 hour. "Inside that box," the Midnight Man said, his voice a seductive purr, "is the key to her freedom. Solve the puzzle, disarm the timer, and she lives. Fail and..." He trailed off, letting the threat hang heavy in the air. I didn't need him to finish the sentence. The ticking clock was a constant reminder of the stakes. One life hanging in the balance. 1 hour to undo years of guilt and regret. "You said it was between you and me," I said, my voice tight with anger. "Don't drag her into this." He just smiled, a cruel, mocking expression that sent chills down my spine. "She's already in it, Kane, just like Sarah was." My fingers itched to wrap around his throat, to feel his bones crush beneath my grip. But I couldn't, not while she was still in danger. I had to beat him at his own game. I approached the table, my gaze fixed on the puzzle box. It was crafted from dark, polished wood, its surface cold and smooth beneath my fingertips. Intricate symbols and patterns were carved into every side, their meaning a mystery. The timer ticked down relentlessly, each passing second a hammer blow to my chest. 59 minutes, 58. Time was slipping away like sand through my fingers. I had to focus, had to think like him, see the world through the distorted lens of his madness. As I studied the box, I noticed a small, almost imperceptible inscription on the bottom. It was barely visible in the dim light, but I could just make out the words, "Time heals all wounds, but some wounds run deeper." The words sent a shiver down my spine. They were a taunting reminder of my past, of Sarah's death, of the guilt that gnawed at my soul. The Midnight Man was playing with me, toying with my sanity. But amidst the madness, I saw a glimmer of something else. A pattern, a connection. The carvings on the box weren't random, they were times. Times that held significance, times that haunted me. And then it hit me. The inscription, the times. It was all connected to Sarah's case, to the victims, to the Polaroids. He wasn't just a killer, he was a collector of moments, of pain, of despair. And he wanted me to relive them all. The timer ticked with relentless precision, each click a hammer blow to my already fractured sanity. The Midnight Man watched me, a smirk playing on his lips, enjoying my torment. He thrived on it, fed off my desperation like a vampire draining its prey. The inscription on the box echoed in my mind, "Time heals all wounds, but some wounds run deeper." He was right. Some wounds never truly healed, they just festered, leaving behind scars that ached with phantom pains. Sarah's face flashed before my eyes, her eyes wide with terror, frozen in time on that cursed Polaroid. 3:15, the time of her death, the time that haunted my every waking moment. And now another innocent woman's life hung in the balance, the timer ticking down to her doom. I scanned the intricate carvings on the box, searching for a connection, a pattern. The Midnight Man was obsessed with time, with capturing his victims in those final moments of terror. Each Polaroid, a morbid snapshot of their final moments, their hands contorted into the hands of a clock. My eyes darted to the woman in the chair, 11:55, the time etched on her own personal timepiece of terror. The time the Midnight Man had chosen for her, or perhaps the time he'd chosen for me. Was it a coincidence or another layer of his twisted game? The carvings on the box swirled before my eyes, circles within circles, numbers intertwined with strange symbols. There had to be a key, a cipher to unlock the secrets hidden within the wood. But what was it? What was the Midnight Man trying to tell me? I ran my fingers over the carvings, feeling for any inconsistencies, any hidden mechanisms. The wood was smooth, polished, as if caressed by countless unseen hands. And then I felt it, a slight indentation, almost imperceptible beneath the number 5. I pressed down, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. A soft click echoed through the silence, and a small drawer slid open on the side of the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a single Polaroid. My blood ran cold. It was Sarah, but it wasn't the Polaroid from the case file, the one that haunted my dreams. This one was different. She was alive, a faint smile gracing her lips, and her hands, they weren't contorted in terror. They were relaxed, resting on a book in her lap. On the cover of the book, I could just make out the title, "The Language of Flowers." The Language of Flowers. It was a long shot, a desperate grasp at straws, but it was all I had. I remembered Sarah mentioning the book once, how she loved deciphering the hidden meanings behind each bloom. My eyes darted back to the carvings on the box. They weren't just numbers and symbols. There, intertwined with the clock face, were delicate carvings of flowers, roses, lilies, forget-me-nots. Each flower a symbol, a word, a message waiting to be deciphered. The timer ticked down to 30 minutes. My time was running out. I closed my eyes, trying to remember everything Sarah had ever told me about the language of flowers. Roses for love, lilies for purity, forget-me-nots for remembrance. But what did it all mean? What message was the Midnight Man trying to convey? And then it hit me. The inscription, the Polaroids, the flowers. It wasn't about the victims. It was about me, about my guilt, my regret, my inability to let go of the past. The Midnight Man wasn't just a killer, he was a twisted reflection of myself, a dark mirror reflecting back all my deepest fears and failings. He knew my past, knew how to exploit my weaknesses, knew how to make me doubt my own sanity. He wanted me to break, to admit defeat, to become him. But there was one crucial difference between us. He thrived on taking lives, on extinguishing the light in others. I, on the other hand, had spent my life trying to protect it, to bring justice to those who had been robbed of their tomorrows. And that's when I knew how to beat him. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice steady despite the tremor in my soul. "You want to play a game, Midnight Man?" I asked, my voice echoing through the silent warehouse. "Fine, let's play, but this time the stakes are different. This time, it's not her life you're playing with, it's mine." The words hung in the air between us, a challenge issued and received. The Midnight Man's eyebrows arched in surprise, a flicker of uncertainty momentarily breaking through his mask of arrogant amusement. He hadn't expected this. He'd expected fear, desperation, the frantic scrambling of a broken man. He hadn't expected defiance. "What are you playing at, Kane?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. I ignored him, my focus solely on the ticking timer on the puzzle box. 20 minutes to convince him, to gamble everything on a hunch, a prayer whispered into the void. "You want to know the language of flowers, Midnight Man?" I asked, my voice raspy but firm. "Fine, I'll show you, but it's not flowers you need to understand, it's time." I picked up the Polaroid of Sarah, her smiling face a stark contrast to the chilling tableau unfolding around us. "You see this woman, Midnight Man? She was more than just a time on your twisted clock. She was a life, a soul, and her death broke something in me. But you," I continued, my voice hardening, "you gave me a gift that night. You showed me the true cost of time, the weight of every second. And you taught me that some wounds can only be healed by facing the darkness head on." I tossed the Polaroid at his feet, the image landing face down on the dusty concrete floor. "You want to know what the real language of time is, Midnight Man? It's not about clocks or puzzles or even death. It's about choices, and I choose to stop you, even if it means sacrificing everything." The timer ticked down to 10 minutes, the seconds echoing in the sudden silence that had descended upon the warehouse. The Midnight Man stared at me, his eyes narrowed, his face unreadable. He was a predator sensing a shift in the balance of power, a new danger he couldn't quite place. "You're insane, Kane," he finally said, his voice a low growl. "You think you can win? You think you can beat me at my own game?" "Games are for children, Midnight Man," I said, taking a step closer, my gaze never leaving his. This is something else entirely." I reached out and stopped the timer with a decisive press of my thumb. The red digits blinked out, plunging the warehouse into an even deeper silence. The only sound now was the frantic beating of my own heart. The Midnight Man's eyes widened, a flicker of fear momentarily betraying his carefully constructed facade of control. He'd underestimated me, misjudged my resolve. He thought he knew the depths of my despair, but he had only scratched the surface. "You have no idea what you've done, Kane," he hissed, his voice laced with a venomous rage. "You've doomed us both." I didn't reply. Words were meaningless now. There was only action, reaction, the primal instinct to survive, to conquer the darkness that threatened to consume us both. He lunged at me, a whirlwind of fury and desperation, but I was ready for him. 6 years of pent-up rage, of guilt and regret, fueled my every move. This was no longer about Sarah or the woman tied to the chair. This was about facing my demons, about staring into the abyss and refusing to blink. This was about becoming the monster, the better to slay the darkness within.